Hello and welcome, my name is Ansu. If you don't know who I am, consider subscribing down below. My shelf is a mess, my table is a mess, my life is a mess, but it's fine. Today I wanted to chat about all the books that I read in the month of February, and I had a pretty decent reading month, I think. I read 7 books in the month of February, which is pretty amazing if I say so myself. And I did stick to my TBR just a little bit. I think I missed on a couple of books that I was supposed to read. I had like one NetGalley book and one very anticipated book that I forgot was releasing in February. And when I literally found out that I was getting it, I was already done filming my February TBR. But I read a bunch of books. Let's chat about them. One of them was a short story, so let's just get right into it. The first book that I read in February, Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. This is the cover that I personally favor. There's another cover inside, if you didn't know. It's like, that's the original cover. This is like the first collector's edition cover or something like that. Anyway, this is the third and the last book to the Last Hour series, and it is pretty darn good. So we are following around these bunch of characters who are going through like the Shadowhunter world. This is set in that whole Shadowhunter world again. And this time around, we're following around the characters of the Infernal Devices, and their children essentially are just going through a lot of crap. And basically what they're going through is what we're following, and this is like a nice little wrap up to it. We're following many different characters just to see like their thoughts in their heads and everything. It's really fun. I had a very good time reading it. It's technically supposed to be a YA fantasy, but if you're looking for more fantasy, I feel like this is something that will lack that particular aspect. For me, it was more of the character development, the lovey-doveyness of each character. That's what I was personally looking for, and that is exactly what I got. And I know what I'm expecting when I go into a Cassandra Clare book at this point, at least in the Shadowhunter world. And that's exactly what I got, and I personally really enjoyed that. So yeah, this one was an absolute favorite easily, and I give it like 5 stars so quickly. Yes, there are some problems in it. I understand that, I acknowledge it. The characters sometimes were a little too much, I get that, but I still really enjoyed it. The next book that I read was My Imaginary Mary by Cynthia, Brodi, Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. This one is a second book to the Mary series, I guess. I think it's a trilogy. But anyway, what these authors do essentially is they take a character from the past, like the 1800s or so. They will change one particular fact about them in history and make it more of a fantasy novel. In this particular case, we were following around Mary Shelley, who is the author of Frankenstein. Mary is a very intelligent young woman who's living with her father and her stepmother. And we have another character called Ada Lovelace, like these amazingly rich parents. Her father is kind of absent. Basically, he was at deathbed and didn't end up dying, and people are very curious as to what happened to him. Ada's father was like a famous writer or a poet or something. These two characters, the Mary and Ada, kind of meet up together due to some circumstances, like fantasy-esque circumstances, and they're working together. They gain this like nice friendship. They kind of bring together this automaton that's like a robot basically that can talk and walk and everything. It's a really fun story. These authors kind of talk to you outside of the book, and it feels very interesting, like you're interacting with the authors themselves. And I personally really enjoy reading these stories by them. The only thing is just like, it's very silly. I'm gonna say right off the bat, it is a very silly story. I gave it a 4 stars. It was a good time. Next up, I read The Personal Assistant by Kimberly Belle. I got this book as an early copy from NetGalley, and I just ended up finishing it. Honestly, it was quite weirdly interesting. We have this woman named Alex who is a social media influencer, and when she started like posting pictures of her family and stuff in the beginning, she didn't really expect to blow up as much as she did. And this like little hobby turns into a full-time job, and she's like pretty famous now. She has this personal assistant called AC, and one day accidentally ends up posting a particular video that was bashing this other creator. Pretty much like a Disney star turned into an adult who's also like dressing very provocatively, I guess more sexily. Alex is not a huge fan, and she thinks that this person is not a very good influence for children, even her own children. So she ends up saying something, and the tagline of that post was just bashing this woman. Of course, a lot of people ended up hating her for it. She gets a lot of hate, and people start to threaten her family. She has 2 young twin kids, and people were saying really horrible things to them as well. So it's really intense. So Alex and her husband are trying to find answers. A lot of crap goes down. Both of them are kind of getting into more and more trouble for some reason. We don't know what exactly is happening. And for some reason, the personal assistant AC is nowhere to be found. So it is almost like a murder mystery. Like we're trying to figure out like what happened to her, if she's dead, and like what happened. We have no idea what's going on, and it's a very interesting story. It took a few turns, and honestly, like the ending, I personally didn't really enjoy it as much as I would have liked to. Overall, honestly, it was a pretty good book, and I give it 3 stars. Okay, so the next book that I read was Piranesi by Susanna, Clarke. I don't know what to say about this book, honestly. This is so difficult to get into, but once I did, it was pretty fun. I think I give it 3 stars. An incredibly short book, so I thought it would be much easier to like finish it, read it, and get through it and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, just to get into this book and the writing style of Susanna Clarke was so difficult for me. Just the way that everything is written is like very expressive and everything is explained in details. It was not my cup of tea. But again, like by the end of it, it was like an interesting concept. I can give it that. So that made it more enjoyable to me. Otherwise, this would have easily been like a 2 or a 1 star. That little like twist, trying to figure out like what the hell happened, that situation was interesting. So yeah, I give it like 3 stars. Essentially, we have Piranesi, who's this young man of sorts. Essentially, he's the last living human in this huge like palace type of place. Nobody else is there in this palace. There's like a million doors, and if you open like one door, there's waterfalls, another door, there's statues. There's so many different things that are happening in this place, but there are no humans. There's no living creatures at all, other than this one person called the Other. So literally Piranesi and the Other. That's it. That's the only like 2 people that's living in this place. One day when Piranesi is kind of traveling and exploring, he comes across this 3rd person who should not be there, and he's so shocked. He's trying to figure out like who he is or who she is and like what the hell is going on. This also seemed to be like an unrelatable narrator. Unreliable. Fuck. Okay, he's supposed to be like an unreliable narrator, and so we're trying to figure out like what is true, what is not true, all that kind of stuff. It is an interesting story, but there's like a little plot twist towards the end that I wasn't personally a huge fan of. Like the revealing of one of the characters' true identity. Didn't like that. That's the only thing. It was a decent book. It's really short. You might be able to read it quickly, but personally it took me a while to get through it. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that too. Okay, the next book I read. This is easily one of my favorite romances that I've ever read, and it is Better Than the Movies by Lynn. This is a YA contemporary romance, and trust me, like I don't read that much YA anymore. It's not something that I personally enjoy as much as I would have liked to, but it was so cute. It was so adorable. I loved it so much. It is incredibly sweet. If you read anything from this list, please read this book. Please, like it is so nice. So we have this character Liz who has this like rivalry with Wes Bennett, who for some reason they have this kind of weird animosity, and they're fighting for this particular parking spot. They have been like neighbors for a really long time, and they've known each other for a really long time. Since she was a kid, she knows Wes has been like kind of evil to her, and he was like kind of torturous to her when they were young. So fast forward 10 years, it is now high school senior year, and Liz is set on having this Hollywood movie kind of a situation where she wants to be with this guy named Michael, who just moved back to town and she has an incredibly huge crush on. Michael is a very sweet person. He went to Texas, so his accent changed. So she works with Wes to kind of get into this agreement to let her be able to date Michael. So just get closer to Michael and be able to date him. It is that whole ordeal of how she deals with this potential romance, with grief of her mother dying, and how she's still dealing with it even like 3 or 4 years later. The fact that she has always thought that a happily ever after is supposed to be this way, it could be some other way, like all of that kind of stuff. And it's really a very cute, emotional story that I really enjoyed. There's a lot about grief talked about in this book. Personally, I thought it was beautifully done. I had such a lovely time reading this romance, and the things that happened after, it's so cute. I love it. It's so cute. Anyway, right after I finished reading that, like I mentioned, I did read a short story, and that was Better Than the Prom. So this is literally the last chapter of Better Than the Movies. but in Wes's perspective. I loved it. I absolutely adored this book, and honestly I'm like in that Lynn Painter high. I'm going to read every single book that woman writes for sure. And yeah, spoiler alert, I already love her. If I did mention, I give both of those books 5 stars, but anyway, last and final book that I read in the month of February was You'll Be the Death of Me by Karen M. McManus. Finally got around to reading this, and I think I've read pretty much every single book that this author has put out. I have to say this is my least favorite book. We're following around 3 different characters. So we have Ivy, Mateo, and Cal, who used to be very close when they were like middle school, but during like a school trip or something they kind of escaped and went on their merry way, had some fun together and all that kind of stuff, but they drifted apart for some reason, and now it's high school. I think it's about senior year. Ivy kind of loses her position to be like school president or class president or something, and she's really upset by the situation because she just got kicked out by this weird guy and she's very upset about the situation. So the next day Ivy, Cal, and Mateo accidentally meet up and they decide to go on one more adventure together. They go on this like little trip and they find this student from their high school also skipping school, and they decide to follow him and they end up finding his dead body. So it's them trying to figure out like how he died, because they're kind of getting framed in the same situation as well, and they're not really reporting it or anything that they saw this kid. They're just kind of trying to hide their tracks and everything. It is an interesting storyline, but I think because I've read other books by Karen and McManus, everything kind of melds together at this point, and I feel like everything is the same. All these like shock factor, it just seems very meh to me at this point. I see it coming, kind of, and I'm just like, ugh, I don't really care anymore. So that's what happened with this book. I didn't really enjoy it as much as I would have liked to. It wasn't bad or anything, it was just not my favorite book. Those are the 6 novels and 1 short story that I read in the month of February. Let me know down below what are some of the books that you read in February that you absolutely adored. I'd love to know. Okay, I was gonna stop filming this video, but I realized I wanted to quickly do like a March TBR with this video because I didn't want to do it separately. There's a good chance that I'm not going to stick to my TBR. That is why I'm going to chat about the books that I want to read in the month of March. I have started reading a few books already, which is really good for me, but I do want to like talk about a couple more. Some of the books that I wanted to read in February, the TBR from that is going to carry forward into March because I didn't have the time to read the books that I chose in that month. And the first one is the Mortal Instruments graphic novel. Did you know this is a thing? Because I didn't. And I actually saw it in someone's video and I was just like, yeah, I want to read this. So yeah, I got a few books in the library. I'll have a library book haul sort of later on so you can see what I got. But yeah, I'm very excited to read this. This is supposed to be like the first, I think the first 2 volumes of the graphic novels are essentially the first book in the Mortal Instruments series. So the City of Bones will be volumes 1 and 2 of the graphic novel. Very intrigued by this one. I would like to see like what is up. I'm very excited. Also on that note, I got another graphic novel, which is Lore Olympus Volume 1 by Rachel Smythe. I don't know what this is about other than I think it's a Hades Persephone story. I'm not sure. But the artwork in here, I just glanced at it, was beautiful, that I really wanted to get to it and just see like how I would like it. Honestly, I would love to know. Yeah, I picked this one up from the library as well, and this is something that I'd like to get to in the month of March. Another book that I really wanted to get to is The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi by S.E. Chakraborty. Like I mentioned in my previous video, if you had watched it, Indigo, which is like the Barnes & Noble of Canada, had a security breach and their website basically crashed. I have it pre-ordered. I don't know where my book is. I want my book. This is something that I'm looking forward to reading, but I don't know where it is. I cannot function. I want to read this book so badly, but yeah, I don't have it. Okay, and the final book that I kind of really want to get to, and it's been looking at me for a little while, and it is Murder in Old Bombay by Nev March. This one is set in like 1892 Bombay in British India, and I think it's like a Sherlock Holmes inspired novel, basically of these characters who end up dying for some reason. It seems like a suicide, but I think the husband is like, this is not a suicide, it should not have been. There's no way they would have suicided. They're just very happy-go-lucky people. There's no way they would have ended their life. So it's like an investigation of that, and I thought it was very interesting. I'm very much looking forward to this one as well. So those are the books that I want to read in March. I just wanted to hop in and let you guys know about that as well. Alright, but yeah, if you're new here, hi, my name is Ansu. Hit that subscribe button. Fuck. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to be notified every single time I upload a new video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all next time with another one. Until then, I'll talk to you in the comments. Bye!